meeting to order. And the first thing we'll do is determine if we have a quorum. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Chair, we have 6 in-house. We have Courtney Cavalier in Massachusetts. We have all 7 present.
Mrs. Cavalier is in a public location at 8 Steeple Street in Mashpee, Massachusetts. She'll be fully participating as a voting board member via Google Hangouts. Okay, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ooh. Does that sound better? Okay, thanks everyone. The first thing we'll do is consider the agenda for approval. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Motion is approved. Community comment. Do we have any community comment this evening? Please state your name and welcome.
Hi, I'm Jason Smith. Do you want me to sit here?
Yeah.
We're having some issues with busing. We live out by on French Lake, just about 7 houses to the north of
Excuse me 1 minute. Courtney, can you mute yourself? Okay, thanks. Sorry, go ahead.
So we live out on French Lake, about 7 houses north of Hoyes, to get you guys familiar with the area. And over the last few years, we've had some busing issues where they wanted to move our bus stop. And this year, they actually ended up moving it to the top of the hill. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the area where you can go left down to the public access, or you can go right down to Hoyes. That's where they moved it to. And my biggest concern is from there, before you go down the hill, there's no houses, you know, so I don't feel my 8-year-old son is safe walking that distance. And then once you get to the end of that stretch, you go down a hill, which is a blind approach, which cars go zipping by that all the time. And like I say, I don't really feel my son's safe at that. So I'm hoping that you guys can help with the situation. I am flexible on where that gets moved to. They always picked us up at the front of our garage, which that's worked really good. But, you know, I'm open to options as long as it's, you know, a safe one for my kids. We do have private road down there. That I guess they were having a culvert issue which we can get together as a community with our neighbors out there to get that fixed. We've also talked with Ung's Resort. That's what Hoyes turned into now. He's willing to let the bus turn around in there. We do have a big parking area right in front of my house that usually the bus would pull down and then take a left and then back up and then pull out the same way, which is, you know, a pretty substantial area. I do have some video if anybody wants to see that, but yeah, I would appreciate any help to keep my kids being able, because me and my wife both work, so being able to have them up there at 7:30 in the morning and then being able to pick them back up at 3:30, that doesn't really leave a full work day for us. You guys have any questions or for me as far as, I don't know.
Have you worked with the administration on this already?
Yes, I have talked to the bus company, and I think it was the director of financing for the public schools, and he was in communication with the bus company, and they found that the road from where they moved the stop to here wasn't safe, which the post office goes down there, you know, I think there's 60 or so houses down there. They travel it every day. The resort has their food trucks, which are anything from semis to straight trucks. FedEx, UPS, everything travels the road, so I don't necessarily agree with the road not being safe to travel.
Okay,
And I have also worked with Colin Johnson. He's the supervisor for the roads out there to see if there was any concerns, and he says, no, we've done our maintenance on there. They've actually just reground the road to turn it back into gravel. And they do have a couple culverts that will be coming through soon enough. And we have worked with this bus company for that hill. They get concerned about snow in the wintertime. So we do, on a snowy day, we will run them up to there because, like I say, we want to be flexible and make it work for everybody.
okay. We'll ask the administration to look into this
Yeah, we'll take a
further
look
and
at
see if we don't have a solution for you, at least you understand exactly what our constraints are. So Mr. Sesker will work on this. Thank you.
And I am pretty involved with our neighbors out there too, so we can get together as, you know, if he wants to meet me out there, I can show him several different options that we've already discussed with the neighbors that will work, you know, for everybody and not anger anybody.
I'll probably grab your address if I can get that before you
Yeah,
leave.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, welcome.
Hi. My name's Jeff Gillen. I'm a neighbor and friend to the Jason who just spoke. And I do have the same concerns as he does. I have 2 children now. I have a third on the way. They're not started school yet. But from where the bus stop got moved to is I will agree, unsafe. It's a steep gravel hill that the kids would have to go up in the summertime. The horse flies and deer flies are so bad we can't even go for walks. So to expect our young children to walk nearly a mile to go to a bus stop in the country where there's a good 3/4 mile stretch or half-mile stretch with no houses. There's one house in a mile stretch that the people, you know, if something were to happen and the kids run to that house, those people would be at work. So just having general concern. I do own 2 of the 7 properties along that private drive that he mentioned. And some of the neighbors did have a concern with one of the culverts in it. And we've been talking about what we would do to repair that. We'd talk with all the neighbors and that because it worked out well for the bus to be able to go through there and not have to back up. But when we had all this rain this year, you know, it's been challenging both for the township and for us that maintain our own private drives. And then also there are numerous places, private driveways and the resort where the bus can turn around. I grew up in Richland Township on a gravel road. In the 90s, from 5th grade to 10th grade, the school bus turned around in my driveway. Bus 8, Diane Boudreau, if you guys know her. She was my bus driver. But every morning she pulled in the driveway at the exact same time I got on the bus, and she backed out onto the gravel road and drove us to school. And so when I was hearing some of the issues that the Smiths are having, I was a bit dumbfounded because that road, like Jason mentioned, is passable. We have residents going to work every day on it. We have food service, garbage trucks, post office, everybody else driving. Colin Johnson, who he's mentioned, the road supervisor. Jason's had discussions with him. Recently, I've had discussions with him about the snow removal service. In the wintertime, our snow removal service in the 10 years I've lived out there has declined in quality. We've changed snow removal companies, and some of that feedback on the road conditions had not been getting back to the road supervisor, so I did have a good discussion with him. We weren't able to get to work in the morning at 6:30 in the morning. The roads were being cleared later than they had been in the past, so I'm not sure if some of that factored into this as well. But there's at least 3 good, well, probably 4 good turnaround spots down below that hill. And I'll mirror what he said about, and I even said it, I'll reiterate it, that 90-degree blind curve that comes down the hill, cars do tend to go fairly fast down there. Turning the road back into gravel has helped that tremendously. It's slowed traffic down quite a bit, but people are used to going fast down that hill. And to be sending his kids, and then mine, I'll have a school-age daughter a year from now getting on the bus, and then 2 more kids following that. To see a 5 or 6 or 8-year-old kid walking that distance, it does have me scared as well. So there's not a lot of school-age children in the area. We're kind of going through a flip where we're repopulating from some of the older retirees moving out and younger families moving in. So it's conceivable too that we could be seeing more and more young families out in the area. And so this is a concern that we have and could become a concern to others.
Okay, thank you. Any additional community comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to recognition awards and presentations, and I see none listed. Okay. Consent agenda, they are to be approved by one motion unless somebody requests separate action. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. We have no retirements. We do not have a finance committee report, and other committees include community education, Anne Marie Leyland.
Good evening. I thought I'd just give you a quick update on summer STEAM and how many students we're serving and some of the highlights so far. I don't have everything gathered yet in terms of demographic data and all of that, but we are serving about 500 students, 494 to be exact. So that's been great. All of the grade levels, 1 through 8, have been really consistent. We've had the least amount of, or practically no, behavior issues at all this year. Sam Oak is our administrative intern for the summer, and he has done a PLC structure, a professional learning community structure for our program assistants, for our lead staff, and for the teachers. And I think that's really helped answer the question of why we are trying, what are we trying to do, and why are we trying to do this for our students in grades 1 through 8. So it's been a really nice addition to the structure, overall structure of summer STEAM. It's played a really positive impact, but kind of the top things that have worked well this year, the student interaction and involvement. Again, going back to those PLCs, we've really seen teachers and staff engage with our students really deeply, and a central theme to this year has been creating positive relationships with our students and really reframing the way in which we are interacting with our students in terms of discipline versus positive behavior problem-solving solutions. So we've really seen a shift this year. It's been very nice. The organization of materials, logistics, attendance, with Ryan coming on board, Ryan Kreminga as our teaching and learning director, he has really helped organize the materials. Google is used for everything now, and that's made, I know that seems kind of small in the scope of things, but it's been a really huge piece of where everyone now feels comfortable going in and looking at documents and looking at the curriculum and looking at the activities that are supposed to be there for that day. It's just a really nice, easy way to access the information and communicate between the staff. So that's been really good. So, the other piece of this is, I was talking to Taylor Werdish today, who is our program lead at the middle school, and he's been a program lead now for the last few years. He's a teacher at Jefferson during the year, and I said, what do you think really sticks out? And he said, we're just kind of like a mini grow your own program, because we've had so many program assistants, our site assistants, go into teaching and actually come back and work for the district. Kat Anderson is one. Denise Mesta, who's a behavior interventionist at the high school, really wants to go into education, so Taylor's working with her on that path. Valerie Henry, Caitlin Haugland, there's probably more I'm not mentioning, but what's really been fun is he's seen this really spark with a lot of our program assistants, a lot of our younger staff that really want to be in education in some form or capacity. And several are going to be big brothers, big sisters going forward this year. So there's been some recommendations there. The partnerships have been deep. We've had a virtues camp theater camp. We've had a theater camp the first 2 weeks led by Paul Johnson from the high school. That was terrific, and that was open up to the whole community. You didn't necessarily have to be a STEAM student to enroll in that. We want to give the community a few more options instead of locking into 6 weeks. The Health Finders Collaborative has been providing some Code Red is one of our camps this year. So they've organized ways to have students learn how to take blood pressure and do all of those things, kind of get their hands into the medical field. And we've had the ambulance here, we've had fire department come in. I just saw them today going through all of the ways they have to get dressed to make sure they don't start on fire when they're putting out a fire. It was just really intriguing. So really good partnerships. Faribault Youth Investment, Faribault Diversity Coalition, and the Twin City Orthopedics has also been a part of our work this year. So it's just really good. It's been a super easy year, really positive. We're gonna have a talent show coming up on Thursday. So there you go, that's it.
Anne Marie, a couple
Yes.
questions for you.
Oh, I just have one more thing too.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say they are pushing out, the teachers are gonna fill out a positive postcard. For every student will receive one. They've been working on this throughout the 6 weeks. So at the end of the program, every student and every family will receive a positive postcard.
Awesome.
Yeah.
494 students this year.
Yep,
How many did you have last year, do you know?
about the same.
About the same.
Yeah,
Does STEAM all run through community education? Or is-
yes.
It does.
Mhm.
What's your max that you can have? Or are you pretty full at 494?
You know, I'm looking at the sections, so I wrote down for each grade. We're anywhere from the lowest of 16 all the way up to about 27. And that's really a good number to be at, but we have 2 program assistants in each class. So we really could bump up to more students than that. I don't know if there's a magic number. I think, Todd and I like to dream big, and we could see 1,000 students coming to this program, and we've certainly had interest from students in Northfield and Medford. They've signed up for the program, and we can take other public school students. We do have STEM kids. We do have, I think, 1 Nurstrand child. So
walk
it
us
could
through the
just be-
funding
yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
It comes from the state into community education? Is
It
that-
does. There's 2 pieces to the funding. There's targeted services funding, which is and I don't know, I'm not gonna go technical here, but it is a part of the ADM, the average daily membership. We get extra funding on top of our 1.0 for those students that qualify for targeted services. So we report that to the state. So we do get some funding back for not only the summer, but for our regular year targeted services STEAM 656 programming. So there's additional revenue there, and then when did we pass the last levy? 2013? How can I even think of forgetting that? In 2013, which was an excellent year, when we passed that levy, we also had 150,000 in levy dedicated to that project. And we don't, so we've maximized a lot of that funding. It's been terrific. We've had little grants here and there too, but
So
yeah.
if we open it up to people from outside our community, to Northfield, Owatonna,
Yep.
Medford, do those schools do not have a summer STEAM program like ours? Is that?
Northfield does have something similar. I don't know exactly, what it looks like. I don't think Medford does, but don't quote me on that because I don't know. But even when I'm thinking of Albert Lee, where I grew up, I talked to my family there, and they don't have a program like this.
No, and the reason I ask, and
Yep.
you don't need to go into deep detail about it, other than I'm picking your brain big time right now, but in terms of for future years, is that something that possibly helps draw other kids to our district, or keeps them in our district, right? We know that we have plenty of kids that outflow into Medford and go to Northfield, and I don't know what that looks like, but I'd be anxious to hear more about it.
Yeah.
If we did open it up, what that means financially, what that means just big picture, all that stuff, so.
Right. I'm with you on that. And I'd love to brainstorm more about that.
Not all students generate targeted money.
Exactly. They have to
meet
qualify.
qualify.
Yep. So when we take, a couple of kids from private schools from Faribault, we exclude them from state reporting, but we do take them.
And then,
Yep.
for the programming, is it like it has typically been where math, reading and writing is morning time and then enrichment kind of activities in the afternoon? Is that how
Yes.
you set it up
Our
still?
teaching and learning director will talk about that right now.
Yeah, the structure we kept very similar to previous years. So the morning has a rotation of math, reading, language arts. This year the focus was on writing. And then there's a science, social studies period of time as well. And then the afternoon is the camps driven by some of the things that Anne-Marie described, like the Code Red,
Escape room.
escape room.
That's pop-
Exactly. Lego build, a lot of those things, the arcade that they did last year, very similar to that makerspace kind of things. So,
In the absence of a year-round program, this is such a nice way to keep kids who may have some academic need engaged. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's fabulous.
And will fit seamlessly in a year-round type of program in the future.
Yes, it will. Tag team that. Okay, that was good. It was good running.
I have one other question. So in regard to reading, math, and writing,
Yep.
do you do any kind of pre and post assessments with this group?
Question, because, yeah, we used to.
Yeah, so we looked at the NWA scores from this year. We also looked at the MCA scores. That's where a lot of the planning went in with the teachers in May and in June in terms of identifying. So for instance, the Moving with Math curriculum that we used, we identified where were those low spots in terms of where were the holes we needed to fill for our students. Writing in that case was really kind of a starting point for us. And so we did some of their own individual formative assessments in the classroom, but not necessarily in a standardized test.
But you will be able to tell if there's growth over these 6 weeks.
Absolutely. I think definitely in the writing, we were having this anecdotal kind of conversation today around, moving kids from where they write with a prompt or they write with a fill in the answer kind of thing, where it might take a couple of minutes to come up with the solution or what they want to write, to the point where we're having a conversation about third grade and they're seeing half hour to 45 minutes of kids sustaining writing, which is a huge growth. It's a huge piece for us.
Yeah. It just keeps evolving, and it just keeps getting better. The camps I wanted to just remark on are now 3 two-week camps, and that is student choice. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's parent choice, but it's student choice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other matters, flexible learning plan. Ryan has assumed the position already. Do you want to talk about this? This is a report and discussion, not an action item.
All right. So you should have gotten the Flex Learning Plan document either in board book or if you have a paper copy, just so that people see. That first page is the statute, so the Minnesota statute that allows us to develop a Flex Learning or e-learning plan. Page 2 and 3 gets into more of the procedure that we're proposing to adopt. And then all the subsequent pages after that are roles and responsibilities, kind of what does it look like at elementary, what does it look like early childhood, what does it look like at secondary, and describes if I'm a parent, what does that mean? If I'm a student, what does it mean? If I'm a teacher, what does that mean? And then the last couple of pages are examples of an activity board or activity grid that elementary could use. So the saga or the history on it, right? So we had 10 days this year for weather related to snow, and then we did have an additional tornado day as well. The e-learning legislation was already in place, but we needed to have a plan adopted by the board and in place before school started in order to take advantage of it. So that's what this process is for this next school year, is for us to have a plan in place so that we can take advantage should we have snow days this next year. Cross our fingers. So then the legislation allows districts to use up to 5 e-learning days for weather-related cancellations. We had a group of 8 teachers in a couple of days in June that we pulled together, and we used the CASE method, the copy and steal everything, and we looked at every district around us of what they're doing and tried to take the best of what people are already doing. And so really had great conversations of what does this look like in early childhood? What does it look like with elementary? And what does it look like for secondary? And then after we were done, we did survey the staff. We put it out on a Google form. We had 31 responses from staff, and by and large, a lot of positive, either great to have it in place or good questions around things to either do an FAQ with or just things to develop. So the flex learning procedure, the big pieces from here is that the first 2 days, the first 2 snow days, will be missed days or missed instruction, not rescheduled. Those are 2 days that are in the teacher contract, that are built in to the teaching contract. After that, we can use up to 5 days for weather-related closure. And the procedure is that it'll become an e-learning day if it's determined before 6 a.m. And so talking with Todd and this last year, the decision to close school typically happens before 5:30. So 6 o'clock was a good time there. And a lot of schools have adopted that. The example I'll give you is the last year when we had the late start, that developed into a no school day. If it's a late start, teachers are still planning to have kids, and they're planning to have kids come in with the start time being about 10 o'clock. If we go and we change that to a no or cancellation for the day, we haven't given teachers enough time to turn that planning around in terms of being an e-learning or an online day. Okay? So that's for us to pick a time that it has to be called by for it to be an e-learning day. And then the procedure does just explain in that they'll be identified through announcements, so it'll go over on TV, it'll go out of our website, it'll go through the auto call, that this is an e-learning day. And then if we get past the 5 days, then at that point it's up to the school board in terms of if we were to make up any additional days. Communication to families, that's going to be probably our biggest component, is how do we get the information out to families. And so these are some of the ways that we've identified that, both through our website and through public events. I gave the example of the district advisory committee and some of the Wiki Community School as well. Early childhood, elementary, and secondary, all through open houses and conferences, and we'll essentially blast the community with, this is our procedure, this is what we have in place. In the document, you see there's a couple examples of the activity board that's for elementary. We will have those sent out at the beginning of the school year with families, and we will continue to give them copies of that. So if they're in a situation where they don't have access or they don't have internet that day, they do have something that they can utilize. Our secondary will primarily utilize Schoology and use that as their communication. And then elementary will have Seesaw that will utilize K-5 as well. Continuing training and development. We're trying to schedule early childhood and elementary to come in and continue to work on those activity boards or what's the driver there. We're trying to develop those activity boards so they align with our curriculum over the course of the year and that they're progressive. So if we have a couple of snow days, we're not using the same board for all 5 e-learning days or all 5 flex days. So we're working with teachers to do some of that scheduling. We have time allocated on November 4th, which is one of our curriculum days, for teachers to touch back on what is the curriculum, what do I have in place, am I ready? And then our buildings can allocate additional time through either a staff meeting or some other staff time, either through the November 4th date or even during workshop week. And then we will introduce it to the entire staff during the back-to-school workshop on that Wednesday. And then I'm working with Matt in terms of getting things published, both activity grids, but also what are the roles and responsibility and procedure for families so that we have it in a nice, readable, good-looking document so that people know what we have planned. Questions?
Well, thanks to the group of staff that got together and created this on those work days at the end of the school year. Hopefully we don't have another repeat of last year, but even if we have 1 or 2 days, it would be helpful. I assume that it would start on the first snow day, or would you wait
It'll
until
actually
after
start-
2 have been expended?
It'll be after 2 are expended, so it would start on the 3rd snow day. Yep.
Okay.
The first 2, because of the way we have the teacher contract, they're built in. And so that it would happen, the first flex learning day we would have would be at the 3rd snow day.
Well, from the responsibilities outlined here, the teachers will not be having a day off. It will be different, but they certainly will be working
It
with
will
students
definitely
that
look,
day.
look different, but I think we have an opportunity to connect with kids and also provide some resource along the way as well, answer questions or keep the dialogue going, so.
So, did it take any technology shift to be able to make it possible for students to access their teachers easily?
No, in terms of secondary, they already have access through Schoology to do that, or via email. So there is no change there. The change that we did add this year is we are adding Seesaw, which many of our teachers, a large number of our teachers already use the free version of Seesaw. We reduced our elementary was not utilizing Schoology to that same level that the secondary was. The secondary uses it for everything. The elementary was not, and so we replaced that with putting in Seesaw, which then we were able to do as a district-wide account, so we're able to push out more to it and help teachers with its support in terms of communication and setting up their rosters. So that's the only add-on from a technology perspective.
Will there be any issues with students who may not have internet?
So part of the conversation with teachers, the elementary, that's part of the activity board, is that they do have a resource that they can have, which we will start the year with to make sure that families get copies of that. Most of the days that we had, we knew ahead of time, by and large. Of the 10 days that we had, we knew the night before. We were looking at multiple days or a day where the weather was going to be too cold and that potential was there to close. So getting that information out to students ahead of time, that the e-learning or the flex day is meant to be a continuation of what we were doing in the classroom. So if the topic of discussion was the Civil War, that there may be a series of questions or things that can continue that conversation so that we don't lose a day with kids. But it also looks different, you know, in an e-learning day versus being in the classroom. So.
Okay, it's the type of thing that you will get better at every time we have one, and we hope that you don't.
We hope that we don't, absolutely.
I do have a couple, I know, I'm
Okay, go ahead.
thank you for doing all the work
Yeah.
here. I just have a couple questions and maybe things you could look into, and I should have asked these earlier. But do you know, like, the percentage of parents that are on Seesaw or Schoology at this point, or is that just really hard?
I can get that for you. Maria tracks all of that, so we can know how many. This year, we've been working really hard to get parents into Infinite Campus and on the portal. And when they have that access, they have access into Schoology. The same, I would assume the same thing will be for Seesaw. We can find that information out. I know that there was a survey a few years back in terms of the number of families online and on the internet, or that have internet, and it is quite high. And so just making sure, though, that they have access and access into the system.
And I have no experience with this anywhere because my kids are old, obviously. But everyone is present. Is that how it starts? And then teachers, if kids don't complete activities, teachers are expected to make time for them at a different day or sometime in the school day to complete those activities if
So
they weren't complete.
every kid is marked present initially, absolutely. And then what we've outlined in here is a number of ways to confirm attendance for students. So either if they're online and in the system, they're attending, they're present for the day. If they do the activity board and parents sign off on it and it comes in the next day, they were present for the day. If there is a situation where the kid's they're not doing that, they're not involved with it, they're not getting online, then that's an instance where they would be absent for the day. But similar to the system, the way that we have it right now, every day a kid is presumed present until the teacher goes around and counts and makes sure who's here and who's not.
And could those absences be used for truancy or educational neglect?
That's a good question, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just something that
I think that
I
would
thought of
definitely be a
when
gray area in
just
terms of
something
our
to look at.
conversation.
Obviously, it's only a few days, or it could be 1 or 2 days.
Right.
But it just would be a question, and I imagine the teachers would be under a lot of, they'd have some time constraints to try to address things with kids or follow up with the activities. So
Absolutely.
just
In
would be
terms of
something
trying
keep in
to continue conversation with teachers, and like John mentioned, it's the first time going through it. It will progressively, hopefully get better, evolve as we go. But trying for it to be buttoned up as well, you know, in a number of, 3-4 days that we say this is when stuff had to be turned in. At that point, we're moving on to the next thing.
Right.
But that'll be something that we'll have to gauge to as we go.
Okay, well, thanks again for.
Yeah.
Ryan, with students who do not have access to online, to internet, or the internet isn't working that day, would they be considered absent then?
I think only until they talk to their teacher. So if they talk to the teacher, again, if it was set up ahead of time or they're working on stuff that was from that class, they would then be present. And we can either go through the office, we're talking about doing a roster, in terms of they would change that to being present for the day. If it is the power went out, and it's the same thing in terms of our teachers as well. If we get to a snow day or something happens and the teachers don't have access, what does that look like? But there would be opportunities for those kids to be present.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you.
You're right.
Can I ask some questions?
Oh,
Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me okay? I think there might be a little delay when I speak. We good?
Yep.
Yes.
We're good.
So to clarify, attendance is defined by work completion, not by actually doing it on the snow day.
It is one of the ways listed in the procedure.
Right. I thought
So
okay.
it could be either that they completed the work.
If I go back to what you were saying, Ryan, about knowing ahead of time about the snow days, that's the distinction in the policy that's drawn between the 3 sequential boards and a general board, right?
Correct.
Sequential ones are the ones that will be tied to immediate curriculum that's going on.
Correct.
And the general would be dropped in at the last minute if we did have the dance notice.
Correct. It could be used that way for sure. Yep. And then
Okay, great.
all of the boards will be available online as well.
Okay, and then, two more questions. So would students be double hit, they didn't complete the work and then they weren't counted as attendance? Are there like kind of double consequences for them because they don't complete the work and they're counted as absent? Or is that not really any different than any day a student would disengage or not be in attendance in school?
It shouldn't be any different than any other day with a student.
Okay.
So the work that we would do over e-learning days should be the same. We should require that or do that in the classroom as well. So if it was to answer questions or continue with the discussion, they should have the opportunity to do that, whether they're doing it on the e-learning day or whether they're doing it the next day. Yeah.
Okay, and can you clarify
Keep it
one thing? Yvette asked a question. I think she was asking if the teachers were going to be required to provide makeup time of the work during school days that were on site at a later point, and I wasn't sure if I heard the response right.
It would be the same. It would be the same as if, for my policy or procedure within my classroom of completing work, whether they're in class or whether it's an e-learning day, that the students have that time to either make up the work in that same time frame.
Okay, and then my last question is, did you gather any parent feedback in this process?
We just had asked some of it through the focus group. The plan as a committee, after the first e-learning day, we have a survey that we're developing that will go out each time we have an e-learning day to collect feedback as we go.
Oh, that's a great idea. Okay, and I also wanted to say thank you to the group. I thought the packet was great when I got it and started reading through it, so I appreciate that, all the work.
Thank you.
Okay,
board action required to adopt e-learning days?
We're gonna,
In August.
That
Yeah,
comes
we're gonna
back-
wait till the
that
August
comes back
meeting.
to us. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks.
Moving on to item 9B, consider approval of resolution 19-27 regarding board control of extracurricular activities. Is there a motion to consider this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. For a long time, activities have been separate from the accounting procedures and rules that the regular school funds have been. And this is a requirement, actually, for us to bring them under the same rules and same conditions that all other school funding is. And I would say this is a great idea. Any other discussion? Did we vote on that?
Get a second, you need to do a roll call.
So, okay. Is there any discussion?
It's required by the state of Minnesota. Is that correct?
It's a GASB accounting rule. I don't know if it's federal or state, but it's accounting.
Guess I know how I'm voting.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
John Bellingham. Aye. Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
John Curry.
Aye.
Jason Engelbrecht.
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway.
Aye.
Chad Wolf, aye. Mr. Chair, passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 9C, consider approval of resolution 19-25 relating to increasing the general education revenue of the school district and calling an election thereon. Is there a motion to consider this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded, and we'll now have some discussion. Mr. Sesker, do you want to summarize this for us?
Yeah, so this is a resolution that would be the final step for the school board to ask voters to vote for an operating levy this fall. There are two questions in this resolution. The first question pertains to a high school 7-period day, if approved, will be implemented the following year. And the second question pertains to transportation and student academic support, if approved. The tax impact for the first question is $65 per year for an average home in Faribault. And the second question, if approved, the tax impact is $34 approximately per year for an average home. If both questions are approved, that's $99 per year for an average home. I also want to mention that this is an operating referendum, so it's a referendum market value approval, and if approved, for farmland, it would be just the 1 acre and the house and the garage that it sits on. This is not taxed on the entire farm. It's just the 1 acre. It is linear, so for instance, if the $175,000 home, if both questions are approved, it's about $100 per year. If the home is $350,000, then it's do the math. It's about $350 a year. So, I'm sorry, $200 a year. Yeah, thank you. Yep.
Todd, question for you. So I am on page 5 of 9, which I think in our package showing the special election ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Is that exactly how it would be worded?
Yeah.
And so it actually, in bold, question 1 would actually say additional revenue for high school 7-period day.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Well, when we discussed this last time, my big concern was that we would have 2 questions, and at that point, it was not clear that we could differentiate between those 2 questions except for dollar amount. And I was concerned that voters could go to the polls and not know the difference between the 2 questions and be confused about what they might want to vote on. And I think these titles clarify that enough for me, so that as they certainly don't explain the details of what we're trying to do with these funds, but I think that is what the district's responsibility is between now and the vote is to do, to make sure that voters know what those 10 words entail for each of those titles. But if they have learned what it is that they want to approve or not approve, these titles will help them know what they're voting for, and so they've satisfied my concern on that.
revoke and replace is not part of this?
Correct.
That's correct.
I have concerns about the title of the second question. I think that, obviously, I'm in support of programs that would provide student academic support. I am concerned, however, that that may not be specific enough for members of the public to understand what we're talking about. When this board commissioned and received survey results on February 11th, the 400 individuals that were polled indicated their greatest support, 56% actually, indicated class size was their top priority for any levy. I have those results if anybody wants them. And so being non-specific in avoiding saying class size is something that does concern me.
Okay. Discussion, further discussion? Do you care to make a motion, Carolyn, or just want to express your concern?
I would leave that, I would like to know how others feel about that before I would make a motion.
How specific do we want to get there, and how many words can be put in there? I mean, can you have a whole paragraph in bold there?
You're looking at the word
Oh,
limit.
10 is max.
That's the word limit right there. And I think that's where
I got you.
well, I hear exactly what you're saying, Carolyn, without more words. I think that's probably as specific as yeah, it's hard for me to come up with 10 words that are going to convey the level of detail we want there, so.
We obviously will have, assuming that we have some type of resolution that passes, extended opportunities to explain what this means in terms of transportation. And it's safe to say it involves changing the distances that we are allowed to provide for student transportation, and it makes transportation available for many more students. Now, you can't put that in there, but that's behind that one.
So, to Carolyn's point, obviously part of us educating the voters and the community would be, those funds would be help to maintain class sizes. Just awfully hard to put in 10 words.
Yeah, so the closest example I can give you is the 2013 election, which didn't have anything in the title of any specificity. And we were able to really send that message out, explain to folks exactly what the dollars would be used to if the referendum was passed. So it's pretty normal to have the general election approved first by the board and then really work on the specific details. Understanding that what we've talked about already are going to be in those specific details. We just haven't got it on a piece of paper yet.
My belief from going through this a few times is the vast majority of people that show up to the poll that day have their mind made up, yes or no. And I firmly believe that. The people that don't care simply don't care. The people that feel strongly one way or another are going to cast their vote yes or no. Both of these questions in all levies or all bonds are going to result in some form of a additional tax or investment or revenue increase type of thing and cost to a taxpayer. So I think it really comes down to educating the community and the voters, and that's all the hard work that's done between now and then.
If this second question does not pass, what will be the result? Will that most likely indicate some program cuts, staff cuts, class size increase? What is the real heart of this second question?
Well, there are really a couple of different things. Number one, we wouldn't be able to move the radius, the 2-mile radius, down to 1 mile or 1.25 or whatever that equates to. The second thing would be we would be kind of in status quo within the budget, the constraints of the budget, to live with our own staff. If we want to do an innovative program, we wouldn't have the ability to add staff to create some of the innovative programs, similar to the 9th grade academy, what we did. Under the current budget, we probably wouldn't have the resources to do that. We'd have to try similar things that we did with the middle school when we were actually probably short a dean. We probably should have added that right away, and we had some headaches a couple of years ago as a result of that. So that would hinder that piece. And the last part, if we do make reductions, if this doesn't pass, and we do make reductions, and the result of that would be more kids in classrooms and fewer teachers. So those are the three big points that would be a result of this not passing the second question. We could still do the 7-period day. I'm confident of that piece. And we would protect that for the 10 years that the levy would go. We would make the reductions outside of those.
This would be totally, what you just described would be totally separate in the second question.
That's correct.
I understand your concern with that, but I'm looking at that, and if we said reduce class sizes, then we are excluding many other things in terms of that. If we decide as a board that if this passes and we do get additional revenue, and the best way to spend that money is to reduce class size, we are allowed to do that with this language.
That's correct.
So this is more inclusive, I think, than limiting it to a statement just about class size.
The other thing, too, I want to make sure the board is clear, is that if we decrease enrollment, it doesn't matter if both questions are passed, we're still going to have to make adjustments with our budget. We're going to have to make reductions. If I have no kids in a classroom, it doesn't make any sense to have the teacher in that classroom.
Okay, discussion? Courtney?
Yes, I have a question. So Todd, given what we were just talking about, can you explain to me and explain for everybody in the room and who's watching or just reading it in the newspaper, sort of what the process is moving forward from here and what kind of documents or supporting material we'll have that lays out our ideas or
Yeah.
the district's ideas?
Yeah, good question. So as we lay out the timeline, I would say we're probably about a month behind in the process for getting things rolling. We have tentatively started thinking about a steering committee, and after this resolution is passed, we have to separate that committee with the school district. They have to be two separate entities. So when the steering committee starts to meet, that group will start creating literature that would go back and forth with the board, and then you guys would be able to take a look at it and do a fact check on that whole thing and make sure that what we're saying out there, when Matt and I or when Andrew and I go out to talk to people, we're sticking with the facts. So those pieces will be part of those things communicated by you and the team. That team can also go out and talk about and put the emotional piece of it in there. The school district keeps that separate. So we stay with the facts, they can put the emotional piece in, tell the stories and things like that. And that's why we team together with usually a group on the outside. So we'd like to get that started ASAP, and I can't really get it started until I know that the resolution's passed. So that meeting will probably start August 5th, I'm hoping. I've already got a few people that are interested. I have a few meetings lined up this week with some businesses and folks from businesses to talk about getting some other people on board with that. And I went to the Booster Club last night and threw some things out. I know a person that might be interested that's related to the person on my left. I haven't talked to her yet, but she'll carry and I'll see if she will volunteer her time. But anyways, the first process is to get that steering group together to help us out, help the board out, help all of us out to create a message that we can really send out there and be consistent. So that whole process has to be planned out, and everything has to be pretty much wrapped up by September 15th, and then the campaign starts usually right after that. So we're kind of a short time frame right now from August. If you think about it, it's only about 5 or 6 weeks that we really need to start getting these things up. So there's a lot of behind the scenes that Matt's doing a good job of working on some of that language to help us get started. Normally we try to start that with the steering committee, but we're trying to get a jump ahead of that so that we at least get some messages out there that people understand and are getting. The nice thing that we're actually a little bit ahead on some of the community members and the stakeholders in the community about this. The Chamber's done a very good job of talking about particularly the 7-period day and transportation and how that can positively affect the school district and propel us forward. So some of those things have been taken care of. But that's the timeline. It'll start with the steering committee as soon as the board approves this in a week, and then September 15th, probably the campaign, and then the vote in November.
I think by us talking so much about question 2, we've short shrifted question 1.
Yeah.
I think question 1 may be one of the most exciting opportunities that the public schools has had in quite a long time, particularly around career and technical education that will provide either alternative pathways for an excellent living compensation for our students straight out of high school or with 2 years of training, or those same students can elect to go to college. So the 7-period day, I think, is something that we really have to be proud of for our community to have the opportunity to pass.
Yeah.
And as far as the piece for question 2, the piece that I think is most important is that transportation will make it possible for students who otherwise have had high absenteeism to be able to attend school regularly. Regular attendance creates a better pathway to graduation. So I think there are many facets of both these questions that can improve our overall school system.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Carolyn. I think that this is a really, really great opportunity for our community to show their support of the school district and really get us into that next level of where we need to be for our schools.
Okay, further discussion? Courtney, you good? Okay. All right. Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
John Curry.
Aye.
Jason Engbrecht.
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway.
Aye.
Chad Wolf. Aye. Mr. Chair, passes 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on, item 9D, approval of TRA exemption for interim superintendent. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. As a way of explanation, we're required to do this. It's a new law. And Mr. Sesker, as a retired and now recently hired as interim superintendent, the district is not required to contribute to his TRA fund, which results in a savings to the district. Is there further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Excuse me. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Item 9E, approval of the Faribault Middle School request to revise their district calendar, the 1920 district calendar. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Could you give us an overview of especially the rationale for 5 and 6?
Sure. So the big big change on this is the first day of school, we like to give our sixth graders a chance to acclimate themselves to the middle school. So the sixth graders would be the only ones at the middle school along with the staff. And it's an opportunity for us to build relationships right away with those sixth graders and their parents. And we think it's going to be a nice, welcoming deal for the kids. The seventh and eighth graders will come then the next day, and we'll get that communication out to let people know. You can see the different days for the parent-teacher conferences. Those are some minor changes. It just fits a little bit better in the schedule. Yeah, and so that's the big one, I guess, is the sixth graders coming the first day.
Okay.
Todd, one question for you. This says on 2 and 3 that we're removing, one is Faribault Middle School Conference, both of these are for the middle school. So we're removing 2 conference nights or conferences and we're adding 1 back, is that right?
Yes.
So net, are we down 1?
Yeah. No, what's that?
So net, are we down 1 set of conferences or am I wrong on that?
It is, do you remember how we did that, Ryan? I'm trying to remember the.
They're looking at attendance?
Yeah, you want to come up here? I can't remember how we ended up getting that final day.
An open house.
They also have, it's not an open house in the spring, but they have their spring celebration event as well. And so they looked at replacing one of those conference days with other events where they get more parents coming to.
Yeah, there's not any less hours for the staff.
Yeah.
It's just shifted off on a different night.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not so concerned about that. I'm more concerned about, now I have an incoming sixth grader, and I had 2 kids in the high school last year, so I had a little gap in there. You know, quite frankly, I'm not a fan of our middle school conferences in the way they've operated in the past, in terms of just the poor attendance. So I think anything we can do there to help that connectivity piece between students, parents, educators is a big, big thing. I don't know how best to do it. I'm trusting your judgment, but I hope it's better than it was previously.
We've had a lot of conversation about parent-teacher conferences. Yes.
So I'm curious how this impacts a parent that may have an elementary or kindergartner and grade 1 through 5 student in middle school, and a student in high school. How does that look for when everybody starts school?
It is shifted on different days, absolutely. In this conversation, and I know this conversation happened the previous year as well, kind of in the same vein as the elementary of that how do we start the school year, and especially how do we start for sixth graders. It will be a shift in terms of if I have a sixth grader and I have an elementary student, they both, the sixth grader would start, but if I have a seventh grader, they won't start that day. They'll start on the Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah.
But so on what day do other students in the district also attend? I mean, what other students also attend on Tuesday, September 3rd?
Tuesday, so it would be grade 6 and 9-12. So the high school. They will start on the same day that they've always started, the day after Labor Day.
And then in the elementary,
They
how
will
does
have-
that work?
They will have that meet and greet conferences on that Monday, or sorry, that Tuesday and that Wednesday, and their first instructional day will be that Thursday.
Have you had feedback on any of those?
Last year we had a lot of positive feedback in terms of also in attendance, nearing 95 to 100% attendance for families, and they had an opportunity to talk with their teacher, and it was different than an open house. They had an opportunity to sit down with their teacher and express some either goals or concerns they might have for their own child for the year. So we got a lot, our principals talked with a lot of parents around that.
Could you inform me on the first day of school for sixth grade only? What are seventh and eighth grade staff working on? And vice versa, what is sixth grade staff working on the second day when seventh and eighth grade is there?
Yeah, so the second day, then it'll be sixth, seventh, and eighth grade all
they'll all
there.
be
It'll
Okay, I
be
mean,
the
this-
regular
that
day.
First day school, seventh grade only, okay. My error.
Actually, we should probably change that. It should be you're right.
We should say 6-8.
We should say that.
Yeah,
John.
we should
That's a good
reword
catch.
that so that, the sixth graders, the middle school staff has been brainstorming their building leadership team as well, looking at what does that look like? And essentially, those seventh and eighth grade teachers being assigned to pieces to work with sixth graders as well. So a class, I'll just gonna use rudimentary number, let's say it's 30 kids in a class, that will have 3 teachers in there to help support that onboarding of how do they find stuff, how do we get acclimated to the building, what does the schedule look like? So they're looking at utilizing everybody in the building that day in that assignment.
Ryan, is this something newer or something being done in a lot of other districts? I know the elementary piece is done in a lot of other.
The elementary is being done in a lot of districts. I know previously you guys had brainstormed kind of what does it look like at the middle school as well. And there definitely is, all middle schools that I've dealt with are looking at what are the different ways we can onboard kids, especially those kids coming into that first grade of middle school. So if it's sixth grade that is the first grade in the building, how can we help them get acclimated? How can we help them feel comfortable? How can we build those relationships and get them started right away? Because those first couple weeks are just, for a new kid in a building and you're new to everything, they can be a real struggle. Anxiety is pretty high. So it's an opportunity to maybe reduce that anxiety level.
So assuming this goes into effect this year, just walk me through how the middle school parents will be informed and how many touches will they get? Not everybody's gonna get email, right? Not everybody's gonna read the newspaper.
So the middle school has a mailing that's gonna go out over the summer as well.
Physical
And so-
mailing?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, and so the same thing will be communicated that way. We'll work through district-wide as well. You know, a lot of it is electronic now, but we'll be sending out anything and everything.
Good.
To say that this is what the schedule is. Looking at the success of it, the future of it could look at, maybe we do something similar with ninth grade, you know, beginning at the high school. Again, that's another transition year where they're new to a building. So how do we do that and what does that look like?
How are ninth graders currently being onboarded?
They're onboarded in some traditional fashions. They all start on the same day. Those teachers are still going through what that first day looks like and doing some of those pieces.
They do have the link crew up at
And
the high school.
they have the
too,
link
which has
crew that
really
meets
been
with them as well.
a nice asset for
Yep.
that. And they also have that still at the middle school. They
Mhm.
have I forget the term,
It's not link.
it's something very similar to link crew with the eighth graders as a leadership group that help welcome the kids in.
Okay, further discussion? Courtney? Okay. This is an action item. I will call the roll. Oh, no, we don't need to call the roll. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion, those opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Items of information, school board members? I'd like to welcome Superintendent Sesker back after his 8-day retirement.
Appreciate that. My comment was going to be, thank you for welcoming me
Oh,
back.
okay.
So I appreciate that.
All right, that might be it. Go ahead, Superintendent Sesker.
That's really about all I have, actually. If there's anything that you would like as far as information, I'm trying to work on a board update at least every 2 weeks to give to you. I sent one out earlier last week. Please let me know, and I'd be more than happy to send that out. But keep on communicating. You guys are doing a very good job with that, so thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, our next regular meeting is August 12th. That's a work session. And I believe we can announce we were going to have a closed session after that for the purpose of discussion negotiations.
Yeah, and then also we wanted to talk about goals at that August
Okay.
session. So we'll be throwing some of those things out. I would say we'll look at the vision statements of the academic, the facilities, all those different pieces. We want to hear from the board. As the teachers will be trying to set their goals by August 30th, we want to try to set our goals prior to that too. So be thinking about goals for the district at that work session too. Give us a chance to talk about those.
And the next business meeting will be Monday, August 26th at 5:30 in this room. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0.